There we go. I think we're set up here, right in frickin' Harlem, uh, right in the trenches where all the unfortunate people that have ended up on the streets here, um, right down in the guts by a train station. Um, I don't have trouble with these folks. They're good to me. I'm also relatively open-minded these days. Um, I was mentioning this morning like about this latching on theory. If you call it a theory or a way to that I found. Don't mind me. I'm kind of in between jobs here. I got my health and safety gear on today, um, which requires the work boots and all that fun stuff. But if you think about it, the dictionary says to us, you know, a latching on is more like a metal bar or a catch or a lever for fastening a door or a gate, right? Well, how amazing is that, right? Because doors, gates, they all open and close, right? And so, what resonated with me, this latch on theory, I guess kind of copycatting the lady that does the let them theory. She's a wonderful speaker. She writes books. I don't have her name, um, but yeah, so really, um, latching and unlatching gates and doors and opening and closing them is becoming it becomes a gateway to your next chapter, right? Well, while taking with you all the positives and the tools, life tools from your previous chapters, right? um as you unlatch the gate with or without struggle and walk through, um you know um walk through the latches and onto the new and exciting, to the new and the excited that makes you thrive, and so what I'm trying to say is as this is always raw and unedited, um throughout life I had to latch onto things to stay sober and clean and be a good human, right? Even if it was for periods of time in my life, right? So these branches are picking up here. Hope we don't lose the deal. So when you latch onto something new in your journey and you open up that gate and you're walking down that new alleyway, if you want to talk a bit Western, um, and it's making you thrive, right? And it's staying focused. You're grounded. You're driven to stay clean and sober, right? Yeah, maybe there's endless things that you could be dealing with, right? But overeating, gambling, shopping. I mean, it's endless, right? My narrative is the addiction. Um, you know, Depression a bit. This latch on theory, if you call it, would work. And when you're going through these chapters of latching the door or the gate and unlatching the new gate or the avenue to the next chapter, um, really some big things to consider would be your age, your mental health, financials, right? Like, what do you want for your family and yourself? Um, just general awareness of where your body's at this time, right? You know, Being hyper focused on something in the early stages of recovery. Sunny down in here, early stages of recovery, as it helped time pass. In the alcoholic and addictions world, you might hear the terms, how much time do you got in, right? Time in is meaning usually, days, months, or years, or what have you. I'm not a big fan of keeping track, because it's such a letdown if you relapse or you have a. It doesn't mean that you've picked up the drug or the drink or went binge eating. It also goes with, I'll tell you what, the stinking thinking that comes along with it, is also a part of it, right? So you might not be actually physically consuming anything, but you'll have that thought pattern of the how you were like when you were consuming and indulging in drugs and alcohol and overeating and gambling and stuff, right? So you know, um, I'll tell you, latching on to something really helps you get the momentum that you need in early stages of sobriety, and or can definitely, actually, I always question myself, um, continued health and wellness for yourself, right? um, and for myself, when I look back, for me, in periods of my life, I look back and there was many examples of me latching onto something to get me through to a. And I mean, I was hyper focused. I ate, slept, and dreamt of these things that I latched onto, right? So going to the oil rigs was great, but it wasn't enough for me. The driller told me, hey, if you stay sober, we'll work you up to a derrick hand. You already know the motors with your background. And I wanted that. I wanted to be the guy in the sky, right? The risky stuff. But it helped me maintain and you know the want and the will to get sober, because I had something to latch onto. Call it a goal, what have you, right? Um, Freaking man purse is flying away, right? Um, there was a point in my life where well, I was quite young when I got my class one, but and I utilized it lots in my life, right? Um, in the oil field, in the heavy civil construction, you know. But just moving a packer wasn't good enough for me, right? And I knew, and I was told by the people I worked for, who happened to be my family, is if you want this, you got to stay sober, and we'll help create and guide you into a position so you can be the heavy haul, the monster, the oversized hauler, supersized man, right? So, running the tri-drive, hauling all the oversized crushers, overweight pit, everything that was extreme. And so I latched onto that, and it got me through, and then all of a sudden I'm looking back and reflecting, not so much on the days, the minutes, the months, the years, but I was sober, right? Um, Being a rodeo promoter, right? Um, we all know that that was somewhat a success the first couple of years, and then I just lived and breathed it and dreamt of it, and how could I get better at it, and ultimately, in the end, it wasn't so successful, right? I went bankrupt, and I felt awful about that, because there was some. So then I had to, you gotta latch on to something else, right? And being a hockey official, right? I just, you need to be responsible, and I had to change a lot, and I'm still changing a lot about my attitude, right? But in order to be a mentor, I wanted to level up and become a leader of officials in the South, right? So I did. I latched onto that, and read and lived and breathed and did that. I know this sounds so I like to say elementary, right? But bullfighting, coming back at 35 years old and 34, 35, and cutting all that weight and sobering up, and then having the phone ringing and having a clear head and fighting bulls. Probably the best I ever did, right? I latched onto that again and never touched a drink. It's just going back to school and recognizing my age, where I was at in life. You got a guy's got to provide, his portion, and so lots of scary stuff there, right? Um, and it's a constant reinventing of the wheel, right? You know, um, Reinventing your wheel so that you can maintain your your to beat your traumas and your addictions, right? I mean, um, I know lots of buddies. They play. I know lots of buddies. I know lots of guys. That they whoop. They they battle these beasts, these demons, and these traumas, and and they don't talk about them. They're great speakers. They're lovely around kids and handicapped children, and they'll give you a shirt off your back. They'll give you their shirt off their back, and they don't understand or see the. They're just so genuine that they don't see that they have the ability to help others, you know, and with their sharing their experiences, right? You know, Society says, and the high class says, you need to have a degree in psychology to help others. Well, this world is so this country in Canada is so buggered up. I mean, so what? They're no wonder that a percentage of this problem is because they're using people who are taught about the substance and the chemical imbalancing and all this stuff. Nah, they've never lived through the extremes of the trenches. They've never been an alcoholic, right? 80% of these students that go to these universities for 4 or 6 years um, don't have the street sense, right? And street sense it sounds a little bit ghetto. I think you understand where I'm coming from, right? So back to these individuals that I know, life after hockey. Now what, right? Well, there becomes a time where you gotta look back at your health, your age, your mental ability to keep on. The lights will go out, right? The crowd will no longer be there. You will be replaced by the next tough guy or goal scorer, right? There's another chapter out there for you. Open up the latch. You some of these guys have won championships, and they just keep pushing, and they're getting older and older, and women too. I know successful women, and they just keep hanging on to it, right? Some, in martial arts and such, and now they're feeling it, right? And they've got so much to offer, but they're depressed because their body's catching up to them when they sit idle. So my suggestion is, with this latch on theory, latch on to something that you frickin' are hyper about, right? Something you want to thrive on and give her and give back. You can be paid for it. It's good money, you know. I've got some clients out here. I mean, they're a bit on the higher end, but I shouldn't be getting into the pay rates. Um, and it just is an amazing feeling sharing your experiences and your strength and your hope with others, Um, yeah, and ultimately it's all these things you latch onto. They hold you accountable and responsible for your actions, right? So, um, I don't know if I'll post this video. I'm feeling like it's too happy about it. Maybe I got to dig a little deeper. But yeah, you just gotta, here I am now. I latched on to taking the QHSO, Qualified Health and Safety Officer designation for construction, right? I mean, I've worked construction all my life. I was born and raised in a construction company, crushing, paving, civil earthworks, all heck, they even build houses. Um, and I thought, wow, like I know that stuff. So, it made the educational part of the hoops you got to get through to be, for any kind of a thing. It made it much easier and fun to show up for class and stuff like that, right? So, latch on to something, you know, latch on to something. Close that gate, open up another one, run down that alleyway for a while, and just keep moving. Keep moving. Um, I'd love to team up with somebody here. Traveling around and speaking to these little communities is fun. It usually covers your expenses and a bit more. But I'd love to team up with a couple good fellas, or have a female come along with us, and we share our stories. Um, it's an amazing feeling to give back. You know, there you go. Wounded Warrior Coaching and Development, Wounded Warrior 911 at outlook.com, or 403 635 6552. Thanks, guys, girls.